Exciting times for the geek. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts Thin Coats with me, Phil the Glacial Geek. Today, I'm still coming to you from the Phil Air, which is nice down here in Savannah, Georgia. And I am going to be working with some more thin coats. Probably at first some more of the prime coats, but I'm going to be working on these Mutatorum crates and these crates and barrels and things that come with them. One of the sprues, just one of the sprues. So the box comes with 3 sets of all of these, which is pretty cool. But I'm putting them together because I'm making them for my board that is going to be going with me to Warzone Atlanta, which I'm going to this weekend. I'm super stoked about. Should be a lot of fun. This is actually going to be my first big GT that I've ever gone to. So it should be fun. And it's going to be a pretty brutal one by the look of it. I've been looking at some of the lists, and they've got some really crazy stuff. They don't have any restrictions on what to bring, so there's some really, it'll be some crazy lists, and I think it should be fun to play. And it's supposed to be really laid back, a lot of fun. I haven't heard anyone talk ill of it, so I think it should be a lot of fun. So that's what I'm going to be painting. As far as talking today, I am going to be talking about what role I think that board games should play in GW's 40K universe, and what role they've been doing with the other systems that they've had, the games that they've come out with. So let's get into that. So recently, GW has been putting out a lot more board games, and they came out with a couple different board games. Like they used to have what was it? The Dracula, and they've come out with board games in the past, but they've been kind of standalone board games, and that's what they've been meant to be. Is they weren't meant to be they weren't meant to be connected really in a real serious manner with the 40K universe. So with the actual miniature games that they've been that's the bread and butter of what GW does. But recently, and starting with I think it was started really in 7th edition, they started coming out with board games that had miniatures that then got rules to be played in 40K. So, for instance, the Overkill box set that came out that was the first time you could ever get any of the Gene Stealer cult models, and that was the first time that the Death Watch really started coming out with their own models that weren't just upgrade sprues on regular Marines. So they started coming out with their own these new things, and it was ostensibly a board game that came with miniatures. So it was a miniature board game. So there's a ton of board games out there that involve that same kind of process where they've got miniatures, and these miniatures are just part of a board game, and it's supposed to be a standalone thing. So you could play Death Watch Overkill and you would have just a game, and you wouldn't have to know any of the rules for 40K. You wouldn't have to know any of the fluff for 40K. You could just play with whatever came in the box, and there was enough there for an entire game. And it was a fun game. I played it a couple times, but a lot of people bought it because it had models. So that was the first time you could get the Gene Stealer Cult models in the new iteration of Gene Stealer Cult. It's also the first time you could get the special models for Kill Team Cassius. And people started buying it just for the models, so not for the game. And to be honest, I bought it mostly for the models. I didn't buy it for the game. And it started to make me think, because there's a lot of stuff that came with it. There was the board game tiles, there was the game cards, there was the dice, all of which were very specific to the board game. Like, you couldn't do much else with them other than just play the board game with those parts of what came in the box. So it obviously was a cost to produce. They had to produce a game with its own mechanics. They had to produce a game with its own lore, everything that went along with it. There was a lot of much that gone into production of that game, and then in and of itself, they also had to produce all of those parts that went into the board game portion. So the board itself and the dice, like I said, and the other cards and everything else that went along with it that wasn't just 40K related, that was actually specifically Death Watch Overkill related. And it started to make me think, well, what's the point? Why couldn't they have just released like a get starter kit with that, and just been done with it, and just had something like they used to do with like the Death Storm kits, or there was one with this Space Wolves, where it was where they came with a kit that was just two armies pitted off against each other. I guess they did it again later with, what was the one? Death Mask, where there's no game to it. It's just two armies, and the rules for playing those armies in 40K, but it's a 40K set. You know what I mean? So it's like a starter set with the rules that came with their own rule books and stuff like that. But it was designed for people playing 40K. It wasn't designed for anything else. It started making me think, what's the point of putting together a board game if people are just going to buy them for the models? And I started to think about it, because they also did the same thing with the Assassinorum set, which actually is a fun game. I actually played that. I've played that a couple times now, and that is a lot of fun. But a lot of people are getting them just really for the models, so why go through the process of developing the board game? And I guess what it comes down to for me is that they want to be able to draw in new players, and I guess 40K in and of itself is a pretty it's kind of an intimidating system to get into. I mean, there's 30 years of fluff that goes into these games, and with that 30 years of fluff also comes 30 years of game development. You've had to carry around 2 tomes in order to play the game. You need to have your army, your codex, or the index, depending upon what you got going on now. But it's basically, you need to have the codex, and you have to have the main rule book. And there's a lot of rules, a lot of specific things. You're rolling a lot of dice. There's different parts that go on. There's different turns. Buying and building the models and everything that goes along with that is difficult in and of itself. And it's kind of an intimidating system to try to get new players to want to buy into it, and to a lot of us, like, we like that. We like the fact that it's complicated. It adds to a little bit of depth to the game, but it's hard to draw in. You're not going to get casual gamers in from a system like that. But what you could do is put out a board game and get casual gamers to want to play it, because I don't think there's a single gamer out there who hasn't heard of Warhammer 40,000. Whatever they play, whatever their inclinations are in gaming, they've all heard of it. And whether they've played it or not, or whether they've even seen it be played, they know of it. They've heard of it, and that is, it has name recognition throughout the gaming world. And in so doing, I think they wanted to try to cash in on that from people who weren't just looking for a war game, that weren't looking for like a complex game that involved collecting and building and painting. They wanted to get people who were just looking to open up a box and play a game. And they started coming out with these board games to try to get those kind of players into it. So they might be interested. They might say, hey, it's a 40K board game. And I know they came out with a couple games like that with their deal that they had with Fantasy Flight, but they started to do their own systems that involved miniatures that could then translate into the game. So it had buying appeal from the players themselves who are into 40K. It also had buying potential for people who were looking for a more casual system, and it had so it was kind of grasping at both sets of people that they were looking to appeal to. So their usual base, the usual cast of characters who are going to go out and buy their stuff, and then also appealing to the, like I said, the more casual gamers, and trying to draw them in, because once they get that, they might have those miniatures, and who knows? I have friends who paint their miniatures for their regular board games, so like Zombicide or anything like that. They paint those miniatures, so suddenly they have a board game that they can play with the cool Games Workshop miniatures. They start painting them. They go, you know what? I like this. Maybe I want to get some more, and it draws them in that way. And it started to make sense to me a little bit more that way. But it's still one. I started to wonder, like, what, because I think I got rid of my Overkill tiles when I did the move, just because of how much space they were taking up, and I didn't play the game. I just really didn't. Same thing with the when they had the. Same thing when they had the what was it? The what was the Horus Heresy games, quote unquote, that they had. there were very few people that were actually buying that to play the game. That was not really even going for the casual gamer. That was just blatantly playing off of people who wanted to play 30K, and get some cool miniatures that they could incorporate. So I think sometimes they go overboard. Like I said, like those 30K games. I know some people have really liked them, had fun with them, but I don't know anyone who's like really dedicated to playing the game of those. I think almost I would say 99% of the people who bought it for the miniatures, and I think 99% is a modest estimate. If I'm being honest about who was actually out there buying what they were buying those for. And that's fine, you know what I mean? If they don't, once you buy it, they don't care what you use them for, whether you're playing the game or not. But it started to make me think, like, what's their end game? Things like Assassinorum, I could see being a good way to get in new players, a new way to appeal to different groups of people. It also was a good way to appeal to the current gamers so that they could conceivably increase their model range, but also maybe have another game to play. So, and it also is a good way. It's also a good way for people to introduce their friends to 40K. It's something. It's going to be, sometimes it's a hard sell to get someone to come and play a 2-hour game of 40K, but it might be easier to get them to play a 45-minute game of Assassinorum Force or Overkill, Deathwatch Overkill, than it would be the other way. And then you could show off your coolly painted models that you made for the game, or give them some of the models so that they could try giving it a shot, building and painting them. And then you start to build on just that relationship. So in the end, I think sometimes they go a little bit overboard. Like I said, the 30K quote unquote board games, I don't think those really hit the mark. I think those went a bit beyond. I think that some people may have played the game because they just spend all this money on a box set that came with the game, but most people were just buying them just for the models because it was cheaper to get the models that way than it was to get them individually, which is fair. And I think that's why people like them, because of their ability to kind of have a box set that comes together with a whole bunch of models. I mean, that's why I really liked Overkill. I mean, for a long time, still to this day, that's the only way you can get Aberrants, until they come out with them on their own sprue. But I think that along those lines, once they started releasing those models in individual packages after they had the games that came out with all of them, that was probably the best idea, in my opinion. And I know that was probably planned from the get-go, but that made perfect sense to me, so that you could have these games that people went out and they could buy a whole bunch of the models together, sort of like when you have Get Started set, anything like that, where you have a group of models that you can later buy on your own. So if you want to boost the models that you have going into it, you can do that by getting them later. And it makes sense. I think there were certain ones that had better, like the Assassinorum Force that came out, they had individual sprues that were then just kept producing into the individual things. Versus the Overkill, I think maybe the Command sprue is the only one that they had that was in and of itself. And then the Kill Team Cassius that came out. Those are the only ones that they had that could also work for just putting them out there, letting it see what happens, and having people buy them on their own. And I think that the more that they do that kind of game system, so sort of like I think the Assassinorum Force was probably a better example of it than the Overkill Deathwatch set. I think those are a good way forward for them with the board games. So they provide a board game that you can get people involved in, to get people interested in. But then you can also go forward with those same sprues, so that if your friend plays and doesn't want any of the, so say you were playing the Deathwatch Overkill and they played and they liked the Deathwatch, they had no interest in getting anything to do with the Gene Stealer cult, they could just go out and buy Kill Team Cassius, and suddenly they've got models that they can start their 40K endeavors with. But they're the same models that they fell in love with while playing this game that their friend decided to bring over. So, yeah, I think along those lines, that's where it needs to go. And in the future, where do I see it more going? They broke off their relationship with Fantasy Flight. I think the big reason that they broke that off was because Fantasy Flight was coming out with their Legion. Was it Star Wars Legion? Their 28 millimeter miniatures game. It's basically Star Wars 40K is what it comes down to. And I think they had that as part of their agreement that they would never do that. And if they did it, it was grounds to break the agreement. So they broke the agreement because of that. And then I think Games Workshop has now come out with their version of, it's basically, what is it? It's like AOS Wing instead of X-Wing, with Shadespire. It's very much along the same lines as X-Wing, where you buy the models and you don't have to keep buying a whole ton of them, and you know exactly what you get in those expansion packs. But you can also they're going to also, I think, coming out in the future with cards that you can get, individual cards, so you can change out your deck, sort of like you do with your pilots and things like that in X-Wing. So I think Shadespire is meant to be a direct competitor with X-Wing, where Legion was meant to be a direct competitor against 40K. So that relationship, would have been strained in and of itself. So they just recently announced a partnership with WizKids, which is fantastic. Those are the guys who do HeroClix and the ones who do Dice Masters. I think as much as I love HeroClix. I really love HeroClix, and I would kill for some 40K HeroClix. I think they would be fantastic. I think that would be so much fun. I think it'd be cool to have, if you see a Space Marine take on Wolverine, see what happens. I think that would be a lot of fun. Or even if you had its own game system, sort of like they had with the Halo Clicks. They weren't as popular, so I don't know if WizKids would be as gung-ho about doing that. I could see them putting out some, maybe along the lines of what we talked about here with the, with the way that Games Workshop has been doing their board games to get people involved. I could see them doing some kind of board game with HeroClix bases on Space Marine kind of stuff, so that it comes with almost like a Space Hulk kind of system, except with the HeroClix system that they have. I think that would be a lot of fun. I could see that working. But I think their big endeavor, and they spoke about this at the launch, was when they announced their partnership, was that they're going to be doing a dice game. So I could see them making, because I guess they had Conquest, which was an expandable living card game system. That was a 40K one, and obviously that was a Fantasy Flight thing, so that's probably off the radar now. But they can replace it with a Dice Masters Warhammer 40,000 edition, and I think that would be fantastic. Dice Masters is a lot of fun. It also gets into the blind booster system, which you saw a little bit of them doing with the Japanese exclusive Heroes line. As much as blind boxes and stuff like that is very popular in Japan, they're also pretty popular here. HeroClix does them, and they do them with both their Dice Masters and also with the HeroClix. So I could see them trying to get into that. You get the same thing with the collectible system with Magic: The Gathering, which keeps the lights on at most local game stores. And I could see them expanding into something like that, and it would be an easy way for them to do it because WizKids already has the system in place. They have the production in place, and all they would have to do is just transfer over the IP, which I think is exactly what they were looking to do. And I would imagine within the next year or two, we'll see a Dice Masters 40K edition or something along those lines that are based on collecting a set of dice. And if you haven't played Dice Masters, give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. And you could expect what's going to be coming forward, because I've talked about this before, but I think that the most impressive thing that Games Workshop has when it comes to 40K is their IP. I think their IP is the biggest thing that they have going for them. I think it's the thing that they have better than any other kind of model company. And with that in mind, I think that that also means that they have to explore it if they really want to be making, if they really want to be doing well, if they want to keep expanding, they want to keep growing, they need to explore their strengths. And part of their strengths are the models. I think that Games Workshop models are in and of themselves the best ones out there. But I think that if they explore even further what they do with their IP, I think they could really expand it incredibly well, and I think that it would be I just think it would be a pretty fantastic thing to do. And I think that exploring it with WizKids is a fantastic way. And they also talked about expanding the board games that they used to put out and that they're going to continue putting out. But at and I think that's exciting too, because WizKids, they produce some pretty decent board games. But like I said, I think their strength and the reason that we need to be excited about this partnership is going to be expanding into a system like like a Dice Masters or something like that. I would love it. Like I said, I would love if there was a HeroClix 40K. That would I don't know. That would make my day, my little fanboy dreams come true. But at the same time, I think that expanding into things other than that is still going to be a fantastic thing to be able to do with WizKids. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward with their like I said, going forward with their what they do going forward with their why am I having so much trouble talking today? See what they do going forward with their with the board game systems. I imagine that they're going to continue putting out their own board games. They're doing it with Necromunda. They're making it a board game that can then translate into its own system, which I think is an excellent way to go about doing secondary systems. Is making them board games that can expand into other things, because not everyone wants to necessarily invest right away in a Necromunda gang. But if you make it into a board game, at least they're probably going to be more, even if they're not sold on necessarily building a gang and having another entire system that they have to build and collect and play. You could probably sell them pretty easily on buying a board game that's got some really cool models with it. And even if it just stays at that, most gamers would be okay with it. And then if you make the game that goes along with it, that good, then people will probably keep investing into it, But you make it into a board game, worst comes to worst, they've got a cool board game. And you don't have to worry about making the hard sell right off the bat. You've just got an easier sell of, just get the board game, have fun with the board game, and then see what you want to do if you want to expand past it. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to go about it with those secondary systems that they've been doing, and they've been expanding into it. They've been doing it with the. They've been talking about the different games that they've been coming out. So they had it with Shadow Wars. They did different things like that had a minimal investment up front that you could then expand out further. But that minimal investment out front was still standalone in and of itself, able to be played. So that, people weren't left being like, well, I just bought this stuff, I don't know if I want to play it anymore. Like if you buy the starter set for Warhammer 40,000 and you don't know if you want to play Warhammer 40,000, I mean, you're probably in trouble. That's all it's good for, is playing Warhammer 40,000, and it's meant to be a starter to you continuing and building and making more. But these standalone board games are designed to not be that. They're designed to be playable in and of themselves, and if you don't want to expand past whatever comes in the box, you don't have to expand past whatever comes in the box, and whatever comes in the box is good to go for an entire game for you. So it'll be interesting to see how, like I said, it'll be interesting to see where they go forward with that, and see if they keep it separate, so that that WizKids' games are meant to be more what they did with Fantasy Flight, meant to be standalone things that are completely separate from the actual mechanics of 40K, and then they keep coming out with their own versions of board games that do have tie-ins to the main 40K game or into other game systems that they're going to support, like Necromunda. Or if they're going to combine the two, so that you're going to have WizKid games coming out with things that are that parlay into 40K games, or if maybe they're going to have come out with Warhammer or Games Workshop coming out with things that translate into WizKid versions. So like I said, they come out with HeroClix, Warhammer HeroClix that can be played within the other realm of the HeroClix, because a lot of the other HeroClix were interchangeable. So they've come out with like Ninja Turtle ones that can play against Marvel and DC and all that fun stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if they do something like that, so that they kind of link the two realms of expertise that they have there, because that would be fun. Or if the Dice Masters, if it's just a set of 40K Dice Masters games within the Dice Masters realm, so you can play Space Marines versus DC heroes, or Space Marine versus Marvel heroes, however they want to do it. it'll be interesting to see how that relationship develops and where they go and what the emphasis is. But I think it's awesome to see Warhammer trying to take advantage of the IP, because I've talked about it a million times that their IP is so strong and it's so interesting and so intricate that is one of their biggest selling points, and that's what people want to see, and I think that doing that more and more often is going to be helpful to the company as a whole, and I think it'll be helpful to us as gamers because we'll be able to get more 40K related stuff that makes us happy. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you like the games that Games Workshop has been coming out with, the board games? Like I said, the Deathwatch Overkill or the Assassinorum Force, any of those, Execution Force, I think they're called. I can't remember what it's called now. The one with the assassins, you know what I'm talking about. Do you like those kind of games? Do you wish they came out with more of them, or would you rather just see them sticking to coming out with starter sets or head-to-head sets like the Death Mask or the Death Storm kits that were just two armies that were pitted off against each other, and they're meant to just be expansions on 40K. I can see both are fantastic, both are fun. I mean, the Death Storm is how they came out with the new Broodlord at first, so I could see them doing that more. But at the same time, like I said, I think their aim in making them board games was to be able to try to link in and pick out new gamers and make it more interesting for them so that they could try to get more people interested. But let me know what you guys think down in the conversation below. What do you guys want to see coming from WizKids and that business relationship that they've got going on? I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be fantastic. I really like WizKids. I like what they do. I like what they produce. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with the 40K IP and to see if that relationship is going to be more Games Workshop giving them access to the 40K IP and letting them go wild on that, or if it's going to be more of a collaborative work between the two companies coming up with things that work for Games Workshop as well as work for WizKids, or if it's going to be even the other way, where it's just going to be Games Workshop telling WizKids what kind of stuff to make and how to make it, and letting them just take care of the production side, which is what they've got a really fantastic production side. I think they said when they came out with Dice Masters, they were like the first or second largest producer of dice in the world. I would imagine they'd be hard pressed to beat out ChessX, but then again, maybe not. Maybe because they're coming out with all the game systems that use all those dice, it would make sense for them. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do and how that relationship develops. But yeah, let me know what you're going. Like I said, I just got started on these guys. We got the barrels going there. I'm probably gonna give them a black wash, maybe go over another coat of these red. I think it'll be interesting. This is going to be a green, so to go along with my Dark Angels, and then these I'm thinking of a black with some gold detailing to go along with those kind of crates. But I think it'll be good. And I'll make sure to post up a picture when I get the board all set up, so to show you what I'm going to be taking with me this weekend to Warzone Atlanta. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this. I certainly have. I've enjoyed the conversation, and keep it going, please. But until next time, everybody, have fun.